Barb, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I've been looking forward to doing this since I started the podcast. So,
I've
Barb,
been
you and
wanting
I
to
used to work together at Beachbody, and we've stayed. We were fast friends and stayed close friends. It's really nice to see you again today.
Good to see you too. I miss you.
Yeah, me too. I mean, hopefully, we will get to see each other in person again at some stage, right? Fingers crossed. I'm sure
Somewhere.
it's going to come.
Yes.
Right. So, tell me, where are you dialing into the podcast from today?
So I'm in Southern California.
Hmm.
I was born and raised here. So I've always had a job that's allowed me to do a little bit of traveling because where I live, it's not like the epicenter of anything really. So I'm coming to you from Southern California.
Perfect. And how's the weather there?
I can't lie. The weather here is awesome. It's like mid 60s right now. I hate even saying it because there's people who are like shoveling snow right now, but
Hmm.
it's mild. I mean, this is a great time of year for us. It's not too cold, not too hot, not too windy.
Just right.
Beautiful.
Goldilocks weather.
I know it's like Goldilocks. It's just right.
Perfect. Okay, so Barb, we're going to get into your 5 key things to think about when it comes to understanding your value as a group fitness instructor. But before we get to that, I thought you might want to talk a little bit about your background in fitness and also, in particular, the last sort of 12 to 14 months, which I know have been a roller coaster for 100 reasons. And it's really
Yeah.
helped you to crystallize some of these pieces of advice that you're going to be doling out to our listeners later. So over to you.
Gosh, where do you start? Do you start where at the epicenter? So I was born and raised into fitness. I've always done fitness at some capacity, and I caught on at a pretty young age that I needed to have more in my back pocket than just teaching classes. So I right away started managing small clubs. I then went to work for 24-hour fitness, then family fitness. I was there for like 17 years, overseeing the group fitness programming for about 19 to 24 clubs, depending on the year. Um, I then left, which I think everyone should do, and I went and opened up a YMCA. And I worked nonprofit for a couple of years. And listen, it's such a great experience because you learn how to make a penny scream. Like
Hmm.
you really learn how to do really good work with very little, and you learn a lot about just how to do a lot with little. And then, I came upon the job at Beachbody. So my repertoire of jobs it's not deep.
Hmm.
I guess it's deep, but not wide. Like I
Yeah,
haven't
yeah,
had
yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
35 different jobs. I'm really someone who gets settled in and I find my path and I just kind of chip away at, getting good work done. So my job with Beachbody came about and it was, well, I know, I love that job. It was such a great fit.
Yes.
It was just, there's something about the company that there's so much gravitas with it and it was fun and we did really good work.
So just for the
Uh,
purpose of the listeners, because obviously I know intimately what you and I did at Beachbody, why don't you just tell them what your role was?
Sure. My role it changed a lot over the years. I was
Hmm.
hired first just to manage the master trainers,
Hmm.
and then it kind of rolled on to overseeing some of the fitness and some of the production. So my title at the end was Senior Director of Fitness and Global Field Operations.
Hmm.
So it was a great job. It was so much fun. And when it came, like most things, my other jobs came to an end because I chose to leave. This job came to an end because they decided to close down our department. And I'll tell you what, I mean, they gave me time to prepare for it, but then when the day that happened, I mean, your identity is kind of yanked from you.
Yeah. So, like for listeners of the show who've listened right back to the first episode, they will recognize this same story from Michelle Park, who's given us her account from the choreographer slash
Yeah.
program director, or I forget the
And she's
name,
a
a
program
format
director for
expert.
Pio.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
Pio. So you were obviously working in the company, and you've already said that your career to that point had been deep but not wide. So obviously you had gotten into jobs and really given them your all. And this was another situation like that, right? Like you found a
Yeah.
job that you said to me on numerous occasions was like your dream, apart from the travel, like apart from the
Yeah.
commute, because you had a pretty long commute, I remember, lots of time for audiobooks. But apart from that, it
Yeah.
was sort of your dream job. So like, and as someone who's had a long career in fitness and has got to the point where they are at sort of the apex or the rise of the career and really at the top of where you can be, because there's not that many jobs out there like that, right?
Right.
Tell me a little bit more about exactly the emotions that you went through, because I know that this is something that resonates with a lot of people that listen.
Well, it's so interesting. One, I've learned so much over the past year is I probably had too much of my identity tied into the job
Mm-hmm.
versus the good work I did, like,
Mm-hmm.
because you can do good work anywhere. But I got so much of my identity from what I was with that company and how I managed my career. It was just, it was something that was just such a big part of me that I learned when it ended, that that's probably not very healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think we need to find our identity in different things, like in
Yeah.
our good work, but not a job title, and not a company either, by the way.
Yeah.
I think, the
And
first
I,
thing I did, Will, January 1st last year, is I wrote down, because I knew my job was ending, I wrote down all the things my dream job would be.
yeah.
I was like in Italy, living my best life. Like, what would this look like? And I seriously, I just thought big. I just
Mm-hmm.
thought really big. And then I put that paper away. And unfortunately, when the job ended, I had already been interviewing for other work. And you kind of feel like you need to work, like you need a title, like you need this, you need that. So I just was
Yeah.
like, I was just jumping in, and I should have paused.
Yeah,
I should have
and I
paused.
and yeah, I completely understand that. It's interesting. I was in a on a Facebook live that I was listening to. It was Emma Barry speaking with Ingrid Romero, and they were kind of talking about that exact same thing, which was a lot of people kind of were really worried about what they were going to do immediately and sort of jumped into other things. And now that we realize that 2020 was brought challenges but also like opportunity to think a little bit more about what it would be, that now's the time to kind of take a breath and reframe what you really want to do, not just what you feel you need to do. And I know that that's also quite a privileged position, and that a lot of people have
Right.
struggled financially this year, and so they've had to take stuff they don't want to do. But from a long-term perspective, if you want to find happiness, you need to find some way to make the things that make your heart sing match up with the things that you get paid for, right?
Well, I think a lot of times we'll take a job to make ends meet, and that's you have to pay your bills.
Yep.
But always have that long term. That's why I talk about having, an end game.
Mm,
So I'm going to take this job for now, knowing that my goal is to either move this way in the company or out of the company and find where my heart really sings.
yep.
And the first role I took, it didn't check many of my boxes. It had a great title, but it didn't. Oh my gosh, Will, I was miserable. It wasn't my jam. And but I didn't want to not have a job. And then I'll tell you what, COVID hit,
Right.
and I didn't have to have the job anymore because COVID hit.
Yep.
So it was almost like God saved me from having to go through the breakup with the company, because it was a
Yep.
clean break. It's like,
Yeah.
so, but
Yeah, because
knowing
that could
that
be a
you
hard
have
thing, right? Like, especially for someone like you that's been, is not someone that's bounced from job to job, but has been in jobs for a long period of time. The ability to go, actually, this isn't right for me, and I don't think it's right for you either, and maybe we should be
yeah,
like part as friends.
and having the guts to say, this is not for me. Like,
Mm,
you're not getting the best of me, and I'm not happy here. And just finding a different path that makes sense for you. But I think we panic sometimes, especially in the fitness industry. But when I thought about this chat with you, Will, it's because I think people don't manage their career in a way that they'll have long-term success. And there's so
mm,
many opportunities in this space to see different opportunities, but we get so myopic in doing one thing, like just teaching classes, just personal training, when really you have to look at all aspects, all the ways you can make money in the industry. And I
mm,
was helping a friend reached out to me who's been in the industry forever,
yeah.
because he was interviewing for a really big gig, and he wanted me to help him with some stuff. And he had been around for so long, it was stuff that he should have known. And then I realized, oh my gosh, like, people, if you're in the fitness industry, if you want to make a living and really have some roots here, you need to know how everything operates,
Yeah.
and everything, and
And we're
know
not going
your
to name this person, but just say that they are a big name in the industry that's presented at, multiple big
yeah.
stage conferences over the years,
Oh,
right? And has a very good reputation in the teaching and
yeah.
instructing and training sphere.
Yeah, and when his livelihood was just yanked from him, and
Yeah.
we all saw that. We saw all of our friends suffer with that. Like, the last class I taught was March 11th. We all know our date. We all know our end date,
Yeah.
especially in California, because we've not reopened yet. So, like, we all know our end date. Like, mine was March 11th. Like, that's the
Mm,
last class I taught. And if that was my only source of income, I'd be in much worse position. I've watched people pivot quite nicely
yep.
into virtual and stuff, but really having a plan, you know, having a plan and taking charge of your career is what's really important.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that we spent a lot of time last year, and I know that I spent a lot of time talking to instructors and, on this podcast many times talking about how to pivot quickly and the things you need to know about pivoting. And so I'm looking forward to this conversation with you, Barb, because it's 2021, and I know that for a lot of us things are kind of the same as they were at the end of 2020, which sort of sucks, but also it's time to start taking what we learned last year and integrating it into the way we'll move forward. And you and I have had a little discussion about this before doing this podcast. And it's really important that instructors, I think for instructors, there were, they basically fell into two camps. Ones that did it as a hobby, and had a main job, and this was a side hustle, less a side hustle than a passion play, right?
Yeah.
And then you had people who instructing was a very important part of their livelihood. And I think both of these groups have been equally sort of emotionally affected, but obviously the financial effect has hit the people that were doing it all in all the time as a career, were hit more financially because they didn't have that other job to fall back on. And I think that group fitness was something that was easy and super fun that got really difficult and emotionally draining overnight. And as we come back, and we're going to talk lots in the podcast this year about what the reality of fitness moving forward is. But as we come back, because classes will come back eventually, hopefully the vaccine will start to have a really great effect. I think we should all be hopeful about that. Classes will come back, community classes will come back, gyms will reopen. But I think it's really important, and this is group fitness real talk, so we're being real, that instructors come back to teaching with a better idea of not just why they're doing it, but also like, what are they getting out of it? And I think that that's something that requires a little bit of reflection up front, which is what I know that you are going to import some wisdom for us about.
Yeah. So the first thing is, I already talked about it, but just knowing your lane and knowing that you have a lane, but you can also pivot and try and expand your lane a bit too. So if you've only done group fitness, you can expand to PT. You can expand to operations, you expand to sales, but always having your foot in another door is really important. Don't just stay myopic in one thing. You said it best a long time ago too, Will. When this first happened and everyone was pivoting to virtual, and our people gave us so much grace. They gave us grace, like we weren't doing it right. We were messy with our, it was a hot mess. And they gave us grace. And you said, it's not going to happen that way again. Plan on it. Plan on this happening again and be ready for it. So we know we can do it, but having a really great planning, really knowing your lane and knowing that your lane can change.
Yeah.
Because I think that myopic view we have right now, or we've had, I don't think we have it now. I think, but even my myopic view with my former job, I didn't see that thing ending.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
I did like 3 interviews in my life, now I spent the whole summer pretty much interviewing. So just kind of knowing your lane.
Yeah,
and
it's important.
Write down what your lane is, where you want your lane to be. Put it on paper.
Yeah, for sure. I think I learned this, the way I learned this best, I think, was when I was at Les Mills, and there were lots of trainers who had been with Les Mills since the 90s, and they had put a lot of time and effort into like bringing Body Pump to the UK. And then they would get to a certain age where they weren't quite the right age for a trainer anymore, and the work would begin to dry up, and they'd just kind of always expected it to be there. And it just became not there. And I know that this has happened with other, instructors. Your instructors at a big box gym, they've had the 6 p.m. or the 7 p.m. Monday night class for years. And then someone comes through and at some point they do get moved on, and understanding that there's a season, but if you give all of your energy to somebody else, you give them control over how you're going to be able to express that. And so if all of your passion has gone into teaching the 7 p.m. turbo kick at this gym and that goes away, like, what do you do then? It's not that you don't have to spend all your time worrying about whether it'll go away, but you should be thinking about what are the components of that makes me happy, and what could I do if this opportunity if this gym closes or if this class comes off the timetable, what would I do? And I think that's a question that we should all be asking in every industry, but particularly fitness after what's happened last year.
Lee, such a great point. When I was doing the SCW circuit the past couple of years, I remember thinking, like, I'm not going to lie, I'm 53. There is a
but a gorgeous 53 with wonderful hair.
Why, thank you. But I have enough social awareness to understand that there's a shelf life for onstage talent. So I know that. And men have a longer shelf life. They just do. And I don't know why. And I'm not mad about it. It is what it is. I can't change that one. I can't change the world today. So, but having known that, I've spent my last 5 years probably being more behind the scenes.
Mm-hmm.
I would still be on stage, but I'd have people with me or I would turn it over to them.
Yeah.
And my philosophy was, I'll be like Bella Caroli. Does everyone know am I aging myself? Like Bella Caroli. Like he was the US gymnastics coach for like Nadia Coleman, like the most winningest.
Okay, I recognize that name. I couldn't have got it in a quiz show though.
I know, sorry. You never saw him do a backflip.
Mm-hmm.
Or I would say Bill Belichick. Have you ever seen Bill Belichick throw a football? No. But the dude is the winningest football coach. So that my goal was to pivot my whole being to being like a Bill Belichick or a Bella Caroli.
Mm-hmm.
Google him.
Yeah.
Because
you have to figure out the spelling yourself.
yeah, right. They coach great people. They bring up great people and they're relevant. They've stayed relevant. And that's kind of, I think it's important too, is the only way you can really stay relevant is to kind of release some things that are going to be taken from you anyway.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And just be the best version of you in the space you want to be in, you know?
So when it comes to knowing your lane, what are some obvious other opportunities that you see for someone who's had a career in group fitness? Harking back to the Facebook Live that I was listening to yesterday, Emma Barry made a good comment that corporate training is a perfect kind of sidestep. A little bit of retraining required maybe, but how many corporate training sessions have you been to that are just dull and boring? Like if you're someone that can command a room and be exciting and make people listen to the information you're imparting to them in a group fitness scenario, then why couldn't you do it for a corporate training scenario, whether it's kind of life skills or I don't know, health and safety or any type of stuff that just needs you to deliver information and have people be engaged?
There are so many opportunities for instructors. I would say start off being like the king of your own backyard. You know, to be a leader in your backyard first. And there's so many opportunities to speak at YMCAs, at women's clubs, at the Chamber of Commerce, at City Council. There's so many opportunities to speak and educate on health and fitness. And really
now more than ever, right? Because people, like two reasons. One, people know they need to be healthy to avoid being sick with the coronavirus or otherwise. And two, governments are starting to realize that healthcare is broken and that fitness and healthcare kind of goes in the same category, and they're beginning to think more about that. So you're totally right, and it makes me think about the conversation I had with Bevan last year. We talked about like being a community leader and a local leader is really what he goes for in fitness and what he thinks more fitness instructors should be focused on, helping people in their local community.
Yeah, you can go to your local, like in the States here, we have medical groups. You know, medical groups need a health advisor, like someone on the ground floor to say, no, this is how it's really happening. You think they're doing this, but they're not doing that. They need someone on the ground floor. And it leads me to my other point too, is so many times these things that we'll do for free. And it's really important that we understand our value. We're too often asked to do things for free. And people are saying, oh, they should want to do it. Yeah, actually, I should want to do it, but I've done it 25 years ago when I first got started.
Yeah.
Now you need to pay for my brain and what I know.
Which is a perfect segue into number two, right? So, which is, why don't you just so that everyone's following along?
Don't give away your time and your knowledge. Like know when to give it away for free and know when to charge. And we had a great chat about this, Will, and that's what started the conversation, was like when I was meeting with my friend, I gave him a lot of my time and I love doing it because he's a good friend of mine. But then I started thinking, I'm asked a lot of these questions all the time. And sometimes we do it because they're a good friend. Other times we do it because there's actually going to be a benefit for me. Like if I was to be interviewed on television and give information, like my local station, I'd go on there and give them great information. And there's something in that for me. But me just taking these phone calls all the time, people are picking my brain. I realized this summer, actually, they should pay me for this, because this is all of my knowledge over the past 30 years, how to make things work.
So how do you know when? So how do you delineate that level personally? Is it tough?
You know, yeah, it is tough. Basically, when I know when someone's calling me when they want my little black book. That's the best way to describe it. A pretty rich black book. I joked about Beachbody, like they wanted me for my black book because they were starting something new, and I have a lot of connections in the fitness industry. When someone is reaching out to me for my resources, that's when I know I need to charge them. When someone's reaching out to me for help personally, that's when I know it's to help a friend. You know? And I don't mind helping anybody. But that's when I realized we are all too eager to not put a value on what we know.
Mm-hmm.
We're all too eager to give away for free. And in this economy, if we all keep giving away for free, that's like when classes went free on, everyone's offering free
Oh my,
classes.
yeah, we've talked about that on this
That's
podcast
when, like,
before.
you
When
guys,
everyone was just giving away every class on
oh, you're
Instagram
giving away
Live.
everything, everything. Give away one for free to get them in the door, but then you
Mm,
have to charge. But the problem is we don't know our worth or our value.
yeah.
And I can tell you stories where I've said, oh, you don't need to pay me that much, but they would have paid me twice as much.
Mm,
So know your worth. Go in there knowing what you're worth. If someone's going to want some of your time, what is it? $100 an hour, 150 an hour, $20 an hour? Like, know your worth.
yeah.
That way you're not just giving it away, because then it waters down the entire industry as well.
Yeah,
And we
and you
are
know
a
what,
smart,
this is
shrewd
going to be
industry.
a really difficult point, because instructor pay is something that I've talked about, I don't know, for the last decade. It's terrible. Like the pay is like, I think, like, monetarily, if like taking inflation into account, it's a whole different story. But if you just look at the average rate for a class, it's almost less now than when I started in the industry in
Oh,
2000,
yeah.
1999, 2000. And when you account for inflation, the real value of that money for teaching a class has just gone down. And I think that a lot of gyms and fitness facilities are going to be hurting, and they're going to be struggling to pay instructors. And I think that this is going to be a really difficult conversation that a lot of instructors are going to face, because at the end of the day, you want to get back to teaching in the gym, but like, if you have developed a really strong online business, then going and teaching at the gym and spending all that time for a small amount of money might not be the right decision for you.
What's so interesting? And I can just speak to like California and the disparity. Like, it's less expensive to live where I live than in Los
Hmm.
Angeles.
Yeah.
So an instructor in Lancaster gets $25 a class. Instructor in LA gets $50 a class.
Yeah.
And that's because of cost of living. But my point has always been, we pay the same to be an instructor. We have the same money for shoes, the same money for music, the same money for certifications. It's like,
Hmm.
it's never been equitable. It's never been fair one way or the other. So I think when people are running their own business, they're learning their worth. And I
Yeah.
hope it makes people who run the gyms understand that you can't have great instruction for free or
Mm.
for, minimum wage. You're going to give what you pay for,
Yeah. 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 For sure.
especially if we all come together.
Cool. So number 3, this is, and you've alluded to this earlier, but take me through it a little bit more.
It's know your end game, knowing, kind of understand when you're looking for a job. Let's say you find an okay job. You have to have a job. What's your end game in that job, in that role? I've always gone into a role, like, I've not had 1,000 jobs, but I've always known, like, I know when I go in, I look around, and I'm always looking up, like, what's my pathway to get there?
Hmm.
Because I think when we stay stagnant, that's when we're not happy anyway. And if you're going to have a job where there's a ceiling, great example is the first job I took after I left Beachbody. The guy who hired me was the chief growth officer,
Hmm.
and he left before I started my job. So that changed the dynamic of everything. Who I was reporting to, it changed everything. So my plan that I had was dumped on right away, and I no longer had a plan or a pathway
Hmm.
that seemed viable to me. Best advice I should have given myself was get out.
Yeah.
So kind of know your end game, and then know your end game, and know that you can fix it, you can pivot, but make sure it's sustainable. Like, just teaching classes is not sustainable.
Right.
Just staying in a job where you're not happy is not sustainable. You need to find something that's sustainable, and a great side hustle that's sustainable.
This is and this is a hard truth that you and I have been telling instructors for a long time, but and it's the same conversation that, to be frank, I've had with master trainers as well. So people who are in the like normal vernacular of the industry, they're sort of a level up from an instructor. They're training other instructors, so they're that kind of one up level of seniority. And the number of times that I've had to sit people down and say, you are pouring 100% of your time, energy, and passion into this thing that isn't going to like pay your mortgage and it isn't going to help your family get ahead, and it does have a shelf life on it. What else are you doing? And I draw back to the trainer example I pulled from at the start, where like, you need to know that your career needs to be a career, not just a job. And if you are just teaching classes, that's fine if you've got an idea of where you want to go, but teaching classes can't last forever. And guys, most of the people that are sort of I don't know, 40 and below who are listening to this podcast are probably not going to get a very good pension, or the pension age is going to be like 75. And so what are you going to do when your body gives out and you need to do something else? I'm not saying you have to do it now, but you should be thinking, okay, how am I leveraging the relationships that I'm building when I'm teaching classes? Am I adding them all to a personal Facebook so that these people can be connections? Because I know of instructors who have actually ended up, like, to use the corporate training example, they were an instructor. There was someone that worked in a big corporate in London, and they ended up going in and being a trainer for that business. And now they've moved out of instructing and into something else because of the relationships that they created. And that's this unique opportunity that group fitness instructors have, is to create strong relationships with people who want more of what you're giving, whether it's your energy, your charisma, your knowledge, your understanding, your companionship, any of that type of stuff. But you need to leverage those relationships, right? Like,
it's funny, Will, because a good friend of mine said that, your next big gig is not going to come from LinkedIn or from job searches. I mean, it may. I had a lot of interviews out there on that side of it. She said that it's going to come from a connection, someone who knows you, knows your work, knows your skill set, and is going to find a fit for you.
Yeah.
And that is 100% true. That's exactly how I landed this gig. It's because the people that I worked with in the past knew me, and they brought me on board for this. It didn't happen through any other way other than they knew me from my connections.
Yeah.
And it's so critical in this industry. Everyone should have a black book. Everyone needs a black book.
100%. And it's super easy now, right? Because it can be social media. You can just add these people to your social media account. And like, it's good to get their email address as well, because social media accounts can disappear and email addresses are a little more sticky. But if nothing else, if someone comes to your class, you should be going, add me on Instagram. I give out tips and tricks and blah, 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 whatever you want to do, whatever your brand is. But you should absolutely be using your classes to build your personal network, because otherwise you are wasting a really great resource and opportunity for career progression, however it may be.
They say your next job, if you're single, your next boyfriend, your next relationship is going to happen from your circle of 5.
Yeah.
From your internal circle. And it really is true. So make sure that your internal circle too is, it makes you level up.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
It needs to make sure you level up. And my fourth point too, know your value. I already talked about that a little bit, but I want to go a little deeper to know your value. Talking about money is probably the most uncomfortable thing on the planet. I don't know why. We just have a problem saying what we're worth. And I can give 2 great examples. One example was I got a contract with my consulting job, and I didn't know what to charge. And I wanted to just charge what I was making with my former job. And it just seemed like an exorbitant amount of money. And I pitched it and they took it. And I was like, what?
Yeah. For sure.
People will pay, but I think we're so used to, I don't know, we're just so used to saying, oh no, just half that. I'll whatever you want to pay me. Go in with a plan. Talk to someone who knows, talk to some experts. I talked to people who had the same role.
Yep.
I asked around. So I knew I was right. I was in the ballpark.
Yep.
And I just went for it and they took it. And then I was like, holy cow. I was not even asked for half that much, Will. Yep. And the same thing with this last gig I had, the same exact thing is I didn't know what to ask for. But when I sat down and mapped it out, like, this is what this role pays, I asked for that, and that's what they paid me.
Yeah, and I think that years and years of chronic underpay in the group fitness, specifically in group fitness, has made everyone question the value that they have. And then I think it's also, you see, Apple Fitness, $10, $9.99 per month, and Peloton, $19.99 per month. And you think, oh my God, they've got these, like, this is this massive company with these big libraries. But that's not the thing that you should be comparing yourself.
No, that's
you should be
scale.
comparing yourself to, so that's fine. But what does a life coach make? What does a PT make? And what does a plumber make when they come? And they've all got skills and they're giving their time. I'm not suggesting that you need to benchmark yourself on a life coach, but think a little bit more about what you're actually providing and how you can price that in a way that's fair, but also gives you back what you need for your time.
And gives you self-worth. Like, a lot of it's just, we don't value what we do or ourselves enough. But then when you actually ask for it, let me put it this way. People see you way more valuable than you probably see yourself.
Yeah.
Because I'd be like, I'd pay them for that. Heck yeah. And you're thinking, well, will they? The answer is yes. And the worst thing they can say is no and come back and give you less. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
My husband's the best one. Like whenever I get a good gig, Jeff always says, "You should have asked for more." I'm like, every time I can get like $1 billion. Jeff will come back and say, "You should have asked for more." Every time, But the
Yeah.
bottom line is, know what before you start to even plan out. Like, let's say you're gonna do virtual classes. Don't say, "Pay me what you want." I see that
Mm,
all the time too. Pay me what you think this is worth. I took a roller skating because you like to roller skate.
yeah.
I took some online. I know. I took like an Instagram roller skating class, but I had wood floors and we're learning how to do
Yeah.
spins. And when she was done, she's like, "Just you can Venmo me whatever you thought it was worth."
I've seen
Ah,
like, you know what? I've seen a lot of people doing that. And actually, I
hmm,
was on the Zumba site the other day, and Zumba has created this amazing digital platform for their instructors. It's a little bit like they've created a bespoke Zoom for Zumba. And I was looking at various classes, and all of them were donation based as well.
I just don't think that's smart. Because and listen, if someone can't afford it, then you can gift it, but you're gifting it because you want to gift it. You're not giving them the option to take a gift.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
If someone says, "No, I can't afford to pay you," say, "You know what? You think of this one as a gift, but next time they're not getting on the platform."
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting since everyone has gone digital, how the effects of the effects of what other people within the industry are doing when it comes to charging and cost and fees has such a material impact on every other individual. And I do hope that we can move away from a place where people are giving away a lot of content for free, simply because it takes so much time and effort to get the skills required to get to a
Yeah,
point
it
where people
does.
want to work out with you.
And there's so many. I'll tell you one thing that's happened very nicely in our industry is people have found a way to make a living selling things to instructors, like how to go virtual,
Oh yeah.
how to set up your, how to set this up. Like, people, I love the fact that people are so smart like that. And if you're serious about doing it, find all the best practices, find people who
Mm.
are leading this in this space, find out how they're doing it. There is no scarcity there. When it comes to fitness, there is no scarcity. If you're good and you have a following, you can make a living in your room leading classes without a problem. I am such a fan of it.
Yeah. And I actually talked about this in a previous podcast that one of the things so since gyms have been closed, and I was in Paris where gyms have been shut down since September. I'm lucky enough to be in New Zealand now where everyone is back to the gyms, and it looks like in a position where there's no coronavirus restrictions, people go back to previous behaviors. So that's a green shoot. That's a positive thing. But what I was thinking is I'm so surprised that less fitness instructors have created walking groups, because what I've really noticed is that there's so many people that have started doing fitness because they've always been a couch potato and they've never gone to fitness classes, but someone in their family was doing online fitness in the living room with the television playing, and they were like, it's not that bad. And maybe they got involved like off to the side or in a one directional live class. And there's so many people who are just sedentary. Like I know that the 20% of people do exercise, 80% of people don't, right? And I was listening to Philip Mills do a webinar recently where he said in New Zealand it's probably more about 30%, and he thinks that's changing. But at the end of the day, we all agree that at least 70% of people just aren't exercising. And we know
Right.
that exercise is the one thing that will protect them against dying young, protect them against pandemics, protect them against heart disease, protect them against anxiety, depression, all of the sort of negative things in life. Being physically active makes them less likely to happen. And so I would love to see more walking groups led by a fitness instructor where their role was not to learn choreography and deliver it. Their role was to be the motivator, getting people to come and make the first steps in their fitness journey. Because once they've done that walk, then they're much more likely to come to your low impact class and then your normal class. And
There's so many pathways to get clients or to get members. That is a great one right there.
mm,
One is it's out. So let's say we're California, it's outdoors, and you have to be outdoors right now.
mm-hmm.
It's outdoors. It gives people the confidence they actually can commit to something. Even if it's walking 3 times a week, start at the park, whatever.
Yeah.
There's a reason why Peloton, and I'll tell you what, Will, I have not had a business call in the past 8 months where Peloton has not come up
Yeah.
as a point of
Yeah. Yeah.
reference, and I'm using it right now. Peloton has, the running, that they have the
Yeah.
tread, and they also have outdoor running, outdoor
Yeah.
walk runs, because people want to put their headphones on and go. What
Mm,
people actually need though is, yes, they need to walk but they need that motivation. They need the human connection. It's
Yeah,
human
and
connection.
100%. And this is the thing about Peloton and Apple Fitness and Les Mills On Demand and a lot of fitness at the moment is that they are all competing for the 20% or 30% of people that already
Right.
exercise. Like not very many people are going, oh, I'm sitting on the couch. What am I going to do? I'm going to invest $2,500 in a Peloton. Like that's not the journey.
Yeah.
Someone who invests in a Peloton is someone who loves working out, knows the value of exercise, who either doesn't live close, like needs to have the convenience of being able to get that workout in at home. And so let those big companies compete for those people and go for the people who are on the couch that you can really help, that will really fulfill you and who are only going to walk if you're there to walk with them.
Yes. That group is called the health seekers.
Mm-hmm.
So they're the group that they never full on get committed until someone holds their hand and they build up and then they become part of the 20%.
Yeah.
It is a big jump from that 80% who's not working out, the health seeker, to become a 20%. It's huge, but it happens one step at a time. It happens when they feel successful doing small things. And there's such a great market in that. And that's, when I talk about knowing your lane and knowing what your options are and it's kind of thinking outside the box, there's so many ways to make a living in this industry that people haven't thought of. That's one, Will, which is great. Get them outside and just start a walking club, a walking social club.
Yeah, exactly.
I've also talked about training young kids. Get those middle school kids. Well, first of all, right now, they're not doing PE because they're all stuck in their houses.
Yeah.
So don't tell me some parent wouldn't pay you $30 a week to take that, drop them off at the park and you work out their kids. You can get 10 kids. Like there's so much opportunity if people would just not think about just teaching a group fitness class, kind of open your horizon. I can walk with them. I can take young kids. I can do seniors. There's so much opportunity. We have to.
Yeah. And I think that for a lot of group fitness people who their entry to the industry was they attended a group fitness class. They absolutely loved that group fitness class. And it could be anything, right? Like it could be a Les Mills, it could be body pump, it could be turbo kick, it could be a great freestyle class. And they went along to that freestyle instructor. And then they get into the industry in order to do that thing that they loved. And then that becomes kind of their view of the fitness industry. And I think that one of the impacts of last year is that we've all had to go, oh, well, like I guess fitness is a lot broader. And if you think of like the Apple Fitness Plus example is really interesting because ultimately where most people seem to think that Apple Fitness Plus is going is that the watch is integrated in health. And so now, even if you don't have a watch, you're tracking your steps, you're tracking your blood oxygen, you've got a Whoop, a Whoop band that tracks your sleep. All of these metrics are going to start to layer up to fitness and movement just being an element of overall healthcare. And I think where a lot of us feel like that already, but we're getting to that point. So where can you jump on that train and start thinking about how can I use my skills as a motivator, as a trained practitioner of exercise fitness to reach all these different groups that you just talked about, right? Like just go out and find them. And your example about going to the town hall and doing a talk. There you go. Yeah. Go to the town hall, do a talk, and then invite people to come on your walking group, one for free, and then you upsell them to some kind of plan for that.
There's a whole generation of people, and I'm married to one of them, who I am, because there's a 10 years difference. So yeah. I'm one of my Gen X, and my husband's a baby boomer.
Do you okay boomer him?
My generation, we're the most adaptable because we had to learn everything. We didn't have cell phones, we didn't have computers, we didn't have any of that stuff. We have to learn technology. That generation is like, peace out on technology. My husband still does checks. He still writes checks. All the men I know.
Wow.
Oh, I swear, and I love my husband. I'm not bad mouthing him, but what I'm here to teach you all is there is a generation of people, the 60s and up, who need technology. They need a Whoop. You could do a whole fee-based class. Get yourself a Whoop. We're going to do this. Here's how we're going to measure your metrics and get them on board with that. Because they probably want it, but they know they want it probably too. Well, like my husband, once he gets something, he's like, that's really cool. I'm like, 5 years ago, dude. But there's so many things there's so many groups of people we can actually answer to. We can be a solution for. We need to start thinking about that. It's not just that group. That's not just that group exercise room. There's a whole group of people, pods of people.
That classroom at 24-hour fitness that I know you loved is not the 4 walls of your fitness career.
No, you got to think of what's it called? Rooms without walls. It's like there's rooms without walls everywhere. And we need to be a solution for these people. We need to be a solution.
For
And the
sure.
last thing, we were talking about, knowing what to pay and know the changing landscape. And we kind of just talked about, for me, we need to make sure in this industry, we're always keeping an eye on the changing landscape. And you and I've had a lot of conversations about group fitness. And I do think group fitness is coming back, but it's going to be a lot different. It's going to be a lot different. And we all need to pay attention to the trends and pay attention to what's going on, because the landscape is changing. And it's almost like that instructor that's still wearing leg warmers. And, like, don't be one of those people. Like, don't just be stuck where you are, because it's changing. It's ever changing. And if you're not up to date, then you will get left behind. And this industry, there's room for everybody.
So can you give some examples of what you mean, aside from the leg warmers, what you mean by that? So like, what's an example of something that you've seen sort of be phased out in the last 10 years that people should probably be thinking more about?
Well, I think the new thing now, not the new thing, the thing that's come around to be smarter is like mobility. I don't think enough people are doing like mobility training, rejuvenation. I don't think, and I'm not talking about foam rolling, because foam rolling can be like, but there's actually things you can do for mobility. People need to think about fitness now as longevity and autonomy.
Yeah. And a holistic, you're absolutely right.
How can I base my career on these two things? Longevity for my clients and autonomy for my clients.
Yeah.
And everything else is just white noise, because you can do those two things in a myriad of different ways. We're not going to, and everything comes full circle. So like, people are back to stepping now, but so things come full circle, but in a different way, but you can't have that same mindset.
By longevity, it's literally living a long life, like to become old, and the what was the other one? Autonomy is like at that old age, being able to pick yourself up off the ground if you fall, or being able to go to the supermarket yourself. And I know that, and we talk about this a lot with shift instructors, it's about fitness for life. It's not about smashing out like your number one rep, unless you want to, but there comes a point when you should be doing this, because this is going to help you to pick up your grandchild, do the gardening, all that sort of stuff when you're older. And there's actually a number of things that I don't do anymore, because I know that it doesn't help for my autonomy. This is why you don't see me tuck jumping quite as much as you used to.
The stuff you've done with shift around that is super smart. I've seen all this. I'm in all your groups, but the stuff you do for mobility and the stuff you do for range of motion, and how you do stuff for basic movement patterns. I want to tie my shoe forever. Exactly. I don't want to like lift my leg. I want to be able to squat down. I want to be able to pick things up off the ground, and the groceries off the ground. There's so many things that we do that we need to do every day for the rest of our lives. Yeah. And there was a time where instructors thought about just being hard and kicking someone's butt. Hard to kick someone's butt. Hard to kick someone's butt. And those days are gone. Yeah. They really are. So, know the trends. Know the trends.
Awesome, Barb. Well, so those are your five things. So it is know your lane and remembering that you can change and expand at any time. Know when to give your time and knowledge away for free and when to charge. Know your end game, so making sure it's sustainable and that you can continue to do the things you love while also making money. Knowing your value and that your worth is different to different types of people, and how to appeal to those different types of groups and expand your range. And then knowing what's going to pay today to make sure that you're across the changing landscape. Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the most important, is knowing the changing landscape. You're not going to be able to make a living right now the way you made a living a year ago.
Yeah. So on the changing landscape point, what are your, as a fellow veteran of the fitness industry, what are your predictions for 2021?
Gosh, I know for sure that there's the hybrid model is here to stay. Yeah. I think every gym owner, I think every small box owner, every instructor needs to be prepared to do both in gym and virtual. And that's not going away, because we need to meet people where they are. Mm-hmm. And I think another thing that's going to change too is pricing, gym pricing. So gyms now, it's become so competitive that gyms are changing their pricing structures, where like a large box has dropped their prices dramatically to entice people to come over to them. So these small boutiques, their unique selling proposition needs to be that they're clean, safe, and controlled. Mm-hmm. Clean, safe, and controlled. If you can say like if I train at my house, I'm telling you, it's clean, it's safe, and it's controlled. Yeah. Like those are some unique selling propositions that sometimes large boxes can't They
Yeah.
can be that way, but they have a harder time selling it. So those are really my things. It's going to be a hybrid, and the small boxes are really going to have to do a lot of convincing that they are what people need.
Mm.
You know, if these small gym owners plan on staying in business, because it's going to be guerrilla marketing out there.
Yeah, totally. And like we are unfortunately, and I would have wished that we were further along. We are still in the depths of the pandemic at this point when it comes to lockdowns and everything. And it's going like the real rough ride, I think, is going to be reopenings when businesses that have kind of put themselves into dormancy have to start again, and they have to find the money to pay people. Because at the moment, like you can kind of just like go, okay, like a bit like hibernation, right? We're just going to hibernate and we're going to cut our costs down and we're going to just try and ride this through. But it's when we reopen and things are slow and a stutter start that it's going to be tough.
So that kind of goes back to that point is, when do you work for free and when do you not work for free?
Mm,
So I would probably work for free for 2 weeks to help some guy get started, knowing I have a job there.
yeah,
So
yeah,
that
yeah,
goes back to knowing, but don't just do it for free. Have some negotiations. Like, I'll help you out for this next 2 weeks,
yeah.
but then I have to get this amount, this many classes. Like, we actually have a lot of the power right now. For the first time in history, we actually have a lot of power. Usually we don't, but we're in a really good position right now because a lot of people have left the industry.
You know what? I actually spoke to a colleague, group fitness manager, who's in Brisbane, Australia, where they've reopened back up, and he said that one of the biggest struggles he's finding is getting. And this is interesting. In Australia, classes have come back with a vengeance. They didn't really. I feel that in the Northern Hemisphere, we've been a little bit more impacted by COVID than people were in New Zealand and Australia. So take that with a grain of salt. But what he said is that during lockdown, people were like, shit, like this is not something that is a sustainable career, and they've gone and they've done other things, and so now they're not available to teach those classes, and so he's actually struggling. So like I don't know quite where we're going to land out, but for sure there's going to be less classes available. Like that's just a reality, because timetables are going to be a little bit lighter. But the other side might be that unfortunately people have had to leave the industry, so good people are going to rise to the top, and there's going to be a little bit of infighting. So yeah, a good time to, if you are a valuable instructor and people want you, to know what you need from them.
It's a good time to be an instructor. It's a good time, but stay on your toes, man.
Yeah, like if you're still here now, if you're still an instructor in 2021, if you've made it through 2020, it's a good time. Perfect. Thank you so much, Barb. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thanks, Will.
Cheers. Bye.